Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our interview with Liam Healy. Liam is a VP and Managing Director at Diligence, which is a market-leading provider of the comprehensive governance software solutions. Liam, thank you for your time and for coming on our interview today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me again, Boris.
Thank you. This is our second interview with Liam. And for those who didn't listen to our first interview, I advise to go a few episodes back and find one of these interviews in the beginning of August. And we saw actually high engagement on that episode, and we are happy to invite Liam for the second interview. So today we will do a deep dive into some of the major topics, what happens with Diligence in this coming period from July. We will talk about environment, social and governance, and the evolution of legal operations and cyber threats. Liam, can you tell us a little bit what Diligence has been up to since we last spoke in July, and what's something you or your team have recently achieved that you are really proud of?
Sure. And thanks for having me again, Boris. It's good to connect with you and with the audience. Hopefully everybody is safe and well during the ongoing pandemic and trying times, certainly for everyone. Having me back, hopefully that means that the first segment went well. Yeah, since July, Diligence been up to a lot. Our key focus has been in a couple of areas. And we can talk more about how that feeds into operational governance and ESG and cybersecurity and such, which we're hearing a lot about. But the two key areas that we've been spending a lot of time have been secure executive collaboration, or as many individuals know it, the board, but not just the parent board or the PLC board at the very top of an organization, but also the entities and the subsidiaries and the directors that permeate throughout the organization. So we've been spending a lot of time there, cultivating our solutions to help solve the challenges that we're hearing from our customers. And then the second, which feeds directly into that, is operational governance. And, that's kind of the iceberg below the water, if you will, which is getting the right information to the right people at the right time so that directors can ask the best questions and operators or executives can make the best decisions. That's harder than it's ever been in a 100% distributed workforce, or almost so, in the world we're in today. And so we've been spending a lot of time there, again, just managing our solutions to make sure that they fit the needs of our customers. What are we most proud of? I think the resilience of our employees, and specifically how our teams have answered the bell during really difficult times for our customers. And each of our customers have different circumstances. We have over 19,000 customers in different industries, and the pandemic and their day-to-day has changed drastically in some cases. And I'm incredibly proud of the resilience that our teams have shown to be able to get in front of that, work with our customers closely, start with yes and figure out how afterwards, to try and make these tough times for many organizations a bit easier.
So let's dive specifically now in this ESG topic, or how do you say, environmental, social, and governance, which is very we hear it's on the news all the time. What are the biggest challenges organizations are facing when it comes to implementing these ESG goals?
Yeah, it's a thoughtful question. It's hard. It is top of mind. It's top of mind for a lot of reasons, but it's difficult. It's difficult from what we're seeing, simply because there's not until recently there haven't been a standard set of metrics, whether they be financial metrics or non-financial metrics, that organizations can benchmark themselves against to know how well they're doing in any of those given areas. And so until recently, while many organizations are going about ESG or each of those areas individually, and working very hard to set a set of standards to measure themselves by, there hasn't been until recently a common set of standards. And I know we've worked closely with Ernst & Young and with the World Economic Forum, as well as the International Business Council, IBC, with the set of standards that they've put in place. There are a common set of standards. There are a couple of different sets now, I think, across the globe of common standards that have been released that organizations are pledging to, that they're gonna manage and themselves to and benchmark themselves against. That internal auditors are gonna work through the compliance pieces to make sure that they're checking the boxes. Having that in place and managing through that, we've worked closely with them to, release those standards through our application and be able to have our customers be able to tap into those and start to leverage those or manipulate them a bit so that they fit their organizations and institutions a bit more clearly. That's been a really tactical challenge. I think the more philosophical challenge that we're seeing is simply the shift of shareholder capitalism and stakeholder capitalism as it relates to ESG. And a lot like corporate social responsibility years ago has continued to evolve. I think what we're seeing is that it's not a if, it's a when organizations are getting on board and being able to prove how well they are doing in each of those areas or in totality through ESG. Because capital, whether it be the investors in raising funds or human capital, individuals seeking top talent and supporting their employee base, or individuals and capital groups are leaning in and saying they want to attach themselves to organizations where ESG is top of mind, and not just top of mind, but that it can be proven. And so, you're seeing even at a very low metric level, millennials and individuals that are choosing the top institutions around the world to work at, are giving up certain perks so that they can align with institutions that their belief systems match. And that's powerful. But that's hard to get right. And so we're seeing a lot of that. And that ties specifically into a lot of the areas that we're working with around operational governance, right? It's great for the board to ask the question, or a board to ask the question, how are we doing with ESG? And to be able to prove that. It's a different set of challenges to take a lot of that decentralized information throughout an organization and manage it effectively, and make sure that the right individuals have a line of sight, can manage those areas, not just that they have a set of obligations in place internally and externally that they can check the box on, but that they can manage over time the risk that comes with each of the areas that support ESG. And so that's hard. And the bigger the institution, the harder that gets globally. And so, yeah, we've spent a lot of time on the operational piece of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's fascinating. That why is it so difficult to measure this progress of this ESG initiatives in the companies?
The first is again, a different set of questions is tough to manage. How well are you doing on the test, right? And so I think it's just getting to a common set of standards that the world would agree by. I think that is one of the first steps, and we've made great strides. Not we Diligent, but we as the business community around the world have made great strides in getting to a level playing field that we can manage by. That's the first piece. The actual management of it, or the tactics of it, is extremely difficult because again of the decentralized nature of information across an organization, and being able to pull that together to have a common view at an institution, to be able to say, you know, here's where we are good or here's where we are not good, and be able to report that effectively. Often we find in conversations with many of our customers, we often find it's not a unique challenge. We often find that it's a kink in the chain, right? Or it's a bit of a disjointed process where this information is being reported on, first gathered and then reported on. That makes it really difficult. You know, I think the proliferation of legal operations in many institutions is helping to solve some of those challenges, right? I think the Office of the General Counsel, or in many cases, what is now falling on the CIO's plate, who often is now being looked at as a COO in many cases, to manage through that information, to put it into a structure that it can be reported on, gathered effectively reported on, identify risks, put remediation plans in place, right? It's hard if you have many of those processes running simultaneously at different rates of speed. If you can get them unified in some form or fashion, it's a bit easier. There is no silver bullet on that, but we're seeing legal operations making great strides there.
Mm-hmm. So, which have been the biggest challenges legal operations teams have faced as a result of this COVID pandemic?
If I were speaking on behalf of our constituency, I think it would say resourcing. I think, you know, if you look at, it's interesting, if you look at some of the benchmarking and research recently, you know, some of the top risks that internal audit or legal operations in particular, as they're working with compliance and audit together to solve many of these challenges, have been, you know, the first is cyber. That's always the top risk. The second is the change in regulatory requirements is fast and furious. You know, no human can keep up with that right now. The changes, especially with the pandemic, the changes in every jurisdiction around regulatory requirements being passed. And the third is the digitization of legal information, you know, taking it out of the proverbial filing cabinet and getting it into a centralized repository to manage the corporate records and your processes. Again, not in all in one place often. That's hard, and the workload is increasing exponentially. And, you know, again, not to quote any specific research on this call, but the research that we've seen and been looking at closely with our customers has been that the workload is outpacing the investments and resources or proactive resources that are going in to support that function. And so it's great that it is up and running and moving in a very positive direction, but I simply think it needs more resourcing. That's the first. With that, as organizations invest in legal operations, it is a standardized set of processes, right? A baseline or a foundational playbook, if you will, to manage each of their areas by. So I don't know that it's so much a challenge as it more is taking, you know, all of the ships that have been at sail for a long time and making sure that they are navigating in the right direction and trying to streamline that on a common foundation. We're seeing great strides from many of our customers. Again, not to name any of them in particular, but great strides by individual organizations that have invested heavily in legal operations, where, you know, they have teams of people that are coming in. They're choosing a system of record. They are integrating those systems of record to all of their major corporate systems. They are setting a foundation and a process in place by which to manage all of the information with a corporate record. And so whether they're a public company and there are filings that they need to do and compliance, obviously, in every jurisdiction they need to stay on top of, or even some smaller private companies who are focusing on liquidity events, whether those be recapitalizations or IPOs, any event where the corporate record is at play. You know, streamlining that information so that they're always ready to be audited, whether that be internal or externally, always ready to make that information a competitive advantage, if you will. And that can mean a lot of different things. But it really is just the getting the resources and getting the foundation in place. That's what we're seeing being the typical challenge. I think that will change over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. And what specifically you guys at Diligent help legal operations meet their goals?
Thank you for asking. If I were boiling it down very simply, modernizing governance in our view is, again, simply getting the right information to the right people at the right time so that directors can ask the best questions and operators or executives can make those best decisions. And if you think, very simply, again, this is, again, a very remedial example, but, the boards, whether they be the parent board or subsidiary boards and committees that are reviewing information at a given point in time to ask those questions or make those decisions, they have to digest the information. There are pre-reads, there are actions and follow-ups to those agendas, all of which is being fed by the operational piece of gathering that information, moving it throughout an approval process, being able to report on it, getting it in front of those people. And we can help, in two very simple areas that we can help are being a system of record for all of that information and having it reside in one repository to be able to move around through a set of process management and approvals, as well as data integrity, moving that all around. And then getting it in front of those individuals through our board's applications and having directors being able to log into one place to get the information, review it, digest it, and then come out of the meetings with clear actions and follow-ups. Having that in a closed loop system that is secure, it's actually a good segue. Having that in a closed loop system that is secure is where we really hit the ball out of the ballpark. I mean, that's our bread and butter, which is top of mind for CISOs right now, given, with all of the technology that's out there and all the disparate systems, sensitive information is flowing throughout an organization and not always inside of a secure network or tagged correctly. That is a very real challenge that we are helping with.
All right, interesting. So I would like to hear your personal opinion. As it relates to governance, what should corporate boards stop doing right now that they are currently doing, and another way around, what they should start doing that they are not doing?
Personal opinion on what should boards do that they're not doing right now or invest more in. I think a big topic clearly is to be intentional about the diversity of their organization. Not just within the entire organization, but specifically at the director level for the boards that those individuals sit on, at the subsidiary level, at the entity level, and certainly at the parent board level. Create seats that are diverse and inclusive. And if you think of DEI&I, that is a very real topic that when you don't have all the right voices at the table, you can't get a 360-degree view on what quote unquote right could look like. And I think certainly it is a topic, but I think that, to quote an individual close to me, sunlight is a great way to cleanse. So like shining a big bright light on it is important. And I think boards need to keep that in mind, that if they're not being intentional about that sort of a movement, then they are actively being intentional about it, or not intentional. And so I think that's important. What should they do that invest in or continue doing that they're doing really well? More investment on governance. Governance has never been in the spotlight more than it is today. And it really hasn't gotten a refresher over the past couple hundred years, is what it seems like. And so I think just continuing to ask questions and be curious, and spend the resources, time, money, obviously, but the intellectual resources to, where can they make it better throughout their institution? Because governance is important. And I think we all know that, but I don't know that we've all been as intentional as we could be about that. And we want to help with that.
Fantastic. So let's jump into the third topic, which is our main goal today, is about the cyber risk. What are the biggest cyber security threats organizations are facing globally?
There are a lot, clearly. One of the topics or challenges that is front facing for us right now, that we're hearing a lot about, is the movement of information and the storage of that information, the most sensitive information, the gaps that are created in that management process of getting the right information to the right people at the right time. And I think that we're hearing more and more now about the risks that the office of the CIO is facing in owning the operational piece of governance. And not just that the office of the general counsel is the customer of the office of the CIO, but more in asking the questions around what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve, and what should directors know about managing the risk of information flow of the most sensitive information throughout the business. Where is it tight? Where is it loose? What's our exposure? And in some cases, to use an example, not naming any applications and such, but a real example is, depending on where organizations are storing their information, there's massive litigation risk in not knowing all of the contents that are being stored, where they're being stored, who has access to those, and then if information needs to be recalled and used, how it is then flowing freely about the institution. And when you think of cyber risk in particular, as it relates to operational governance or managing risk, sometimes we're our own worst enemies, and we're hearing that a lot these days with how information can move about a business. And for example, misplacing or mishandling, version 13 of a board pack or a board deck with information that might not even be complete, might be more damaging than losing access to the final version because it's incomplete information. And so the question is, how do you move that around when there are directors that will request, send this to my Gmail or send this to my Yahoo, or text me the information, because they want to be able to carry their duties out as they should easily, and they just want to be able to access the information and ask great questions, and rightfully so. But sometimes ease of use is tugging at the heartstrings of control and security, and where institutions don't have that in their grasp, they're exposing their organizations to massive risk. And sometimes they know that, and there's just not an intentional movement to change that. And I think that is now falling more on the critical thinking and nature by which CIOs are becoming more like COOs these days, and leaning in and operating with their legal counterparts to tighten that up a bit. That is right now, that is one of the biggest, obviously cyber is top of mind everywhere all the time. But that is one of the biggest things that we're getting asked about every day, and especially in a world where we are 100% distributed in today's workforce.
Absolutely. Now we are going to this, given virtual work is still very much ongoing all over the world. Are company leaders going to prioritize investing in technology to combat cyber threats? What do you see on the market?
I'm sorry, ask that again, Boris?
Provided that we are doing a lot of virtual work is still ongoing around the world. What do you see company leaders prioritize, invest in, or make priority in technology to combat this threat?
They're doubling down, and well, there's two areas that we're seeing a lot of. The first is in audit of systems. What are the systems that they are using for what processes and applications? What information is it managing, right? So we're seeing a bit of an audit. But actually, let me back up for a second. The first 90 to 120 days was creating continuity from the transition from being in offices every day to being remote every day. And during that peak, there was a different set of challenges to the world seems to have settled into a remote work environment. And over the last few months, 3 or 4 months since July, since we spoke, that normalization now is creating the opportunity for institutions to get back onto the front foot. So they're doing a bit of the auditing of their systems, understanding how their information flows throughout the organization. What are the investments they can make to shore up VPNs and or secure access, especially on the most sensitive information. So doing an audit there, and then creating new policies in many cases, new policy on how information is being managed. Again, it has provided a unique opportunity and shined a spotlight on organizations, not a new problem, right, but highlighting or accentuating an existing opportunity and challenge that they're facing to get it right. And now that we've been in this for 9-ish months, going on 10 months, I would, personal opinion, I would find it hard to believe that many organizations will go back to an everyday in the office environment. I think many organizations have seen productivity go up. Yeah. I think that they've had to force themselves to get better access virtually and figure out those processes. And so it will be interesting to see how we evolve.
Interesting. And how does someone listening to this for the first time, or maybe even IT expert, should go about it? How it should prepare for next year, for example? Do we have some tips? Maybe 1, 2, 3, or something?
It depends on if you're listening to it for the first time and you're thinking about it's that time of year. If you're on a calendar fiscal year and you're budgeting or you're trying to finalize budgets for next year, I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of from counterparts in the industry and individuals that own budgets is, first half of the year is probably going to look a lot like this year did when it comes to travel and expense and management of virtual world versus in-office world. So planning that way, so being prepared for the first 180 days of next year, but the back half of 180 days in 2021 will probably look a little bit different. So being prepared with investments to ramp back up to certain areas. That's we don't see a lot of it being 100% virtual next year, obviously, but we see that the evolution will come back to more travel and such. So I think there are investments there to just be aware of as you plan for next year. Operationally is again the investments. We're just seeing lots of organizations invest in getting on the front foot of shoring up their operational side of governance. Making sure that they've done an audit of their systems, their process, who has access to what, and looking at how they manage that best. So I really think that, you know, the easiest way, if you're a first-time listener, the easiest way that we think about it, or the best way I've heard it described to me from a customer, is it's like an iceberg. I think I've probably used this analogy before from them. Is it's like an iceberg. At the top of the iceberg is above the water. Everyone knows the board. Everyone understands who the board is. They know their responsibilities. They know the consequences. They understand who's on the hook for how the business is managed. What they don't understand, or what they don't often see, is what's below the water. And that is the 80% of the iceberg that sits below the water, is that operational piece, is the investments and time and money and intellectual thoughtfulness that goes into managing that process. And that is the entire group structure of a business, and every piece that goes into it, trying to have them be aligned. Uniting all the departments to make that work well. Those are the two key areas that we are constantly hearing are front of mind right now. And the operational piece is big.
All right. So fantastic. We touched major 3 points, and I wonder if there is something that I didn't ask you and you want to add.
Nothing else on mind. Thank you is the biggest thing. Thank you to you. Thank you to your listeners. Always have a fantastic discussion.
Okay.
It's great. It's great to catch up.
Thank you, Liam, and I wish your company Diligent great success in the coming period. And I know you have a lot of work to do, a lot of new customers and the old ones. So I wish you a good luck.
Thanks, Boris. I appreciate it.
Perhaps we can speak in a few months again on new development.
I would love it.
Thank you.